Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you for coming. We are another episode of Bar Talk. Today we have a great guest. We have Joe Nery, attorney at law here. Joe, can you present yourself to the audience?
Yeah, so I've been practicing law for 25 years. I can't believe it. I'm that old, but I've been doing that for 25 years. So I do a lot of real estate, which is how you and I know each other, Pablo. And there's just so much going on in the world of real estate right now in the industry that I think it's a great topic to cover today.
Great. And then we got, of course, my good friend Dan Rogers. Dan,
glad to be back. Yeah, glad to be back. So this is a really great topic, and I'm glad to be sitting with you guys to discuss it a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, this topic is great. I mean, and the topic is, of course, the NAR lawsuits and how they are going to be affecting, or what they've been affecting now, what we should be looking at in the future. Joe, can you guys just kind of sum it up for us? So
a lot of what's been going on really in the marketplace is the settlement, well, not the settlements, but the lawsuit results for the Sitzer-Burnett case, which was in Missouri. And essentially what it comes down to is this lawsuit is over the NAR participation rule, right? So the idea being that in these listing agreements, you could then go ahead and say how much you were going to pay the cooperating broker, the buyer's broker, how much they were going to be paid. And so, I mean, just to summarize it, the argument was essentially, hey, you're forcing these buyers to have to go ahead, and you're forcing rather the sellers to have to pay the buyer's agent, right? And so the argument has been, well, why does the seller have to cover both sides of the transaction, right? Why isn't the buyer covering their own compensation? And so in the end, not to go through all the details, but in the end, the case wound up resulting in favor of the plaintiffs. So then it was the sellers in Missouri, this group of sellers in Missouri, that the court decided that they had been wronged, right? And that this NAR participation rule was really taking advantage and overcharging folks. They felt that there were issues of somewhat of steering, and just the fees were a lot higher than they should have been in most scenarios. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're at. I mean, so now the result was something like a $1.8 billion the damages, up to possibly $5 billion. But that case is now it's going to be appealed. Right. And so that appeal could take 2 years before we get a result in that appeal. But now what's happened in the industry is now you have copycat lawsuits. So I was just writing down just to remind myself, because there's so many. There's lawsuits now in Illinois, Florida, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Texas, and they just filed some in California, I think yesterday or today. Yeah. So you've got all these copycat lawsuits that are appearing and they're popping up. And now, but it's a little different spin. The first few lawsuits were really after the franchises, right? So the Remaxes of the world, Century 21s, EXPs, you name it. But now the last ones, the ones in Texas, they're actually going after big producing teams and even individuals. Wow. So it's really changed, right? And so it's interesting from an attorney's perspective, understanding class action lawsuits. A lot of people are arguing, well, and any lawsuit, you're going to go after the deep pockets. You're going to go after the people that have the money. If you're going to sue, that's what you want to do.
And then you can ask action. Also, once you win one, it's at the beginning.
That's it.
Of an never ending. I mean, it's domino effect.
And as soon as they lost that lawsuit in Missouri, now everybody's thinking, hey, let's file other lawsuits and let's see where else we can win. That's what the class action attorneys are thinking.
And of course, what we're hearing a lot of, it's going to be devastating for a lot of buyers, devastating for a lot of agents. Yeah. What's your take? I understand. What do you see?
Well, like anything else, we've all had to adapt, right? I mean, we've adapted to housing crises, and we've adapted to so many things. So I feel that we're going to figure out what's going to work. I don't know that there's going to be just one fix, right? It's going to be a seller to seller, buyer to buyer, company to company relationship of from deal to deal in some ways. I just don't see the board of realtors or mandating this is exactly how it's going to work at this point.
I mean, but when it comes to credits and stuff, and so we know we have a lot of buyers that barely got the 3% down, right? They're not going to have enough money to pay for, if that was to come true, where it's going to be across the board now. Most buyers are going to be paying for their buyer agents. What do you foresee as some solutions with the FHA 6% down, or conventional 6% down, or putting on the principal? I mean, do you see something that happening?
We're definitely going to be having the conversation with customers that we would never have had before, right? When we do a pre-approval for a buyer, we're going to then be discussing with them. Now, by the way, you're going to go out and be looking at homes. The industry's changing. Right. You may have to pay the agent who's representing you to show you homes and negotiate your contract and all those things. And that will be a closing cost. Now, it's your rights to try to negotiate a credit from the seller. That is perfectly allowed on conventional loans and FHA loans. It's not allowed on VA loans. You can get a credit, but they can't directly pay for a realtor's commission, okay?
Right.
But they can get a credit to cover all of their closing costs. So I think there's an education process for the customer, right? For that buyer, that this could be an added expense that we need to have you prepared with. And hopefully as contracts get negotiated, it's going to allow for some of them to get credits. I think it's going to be rough though in a housing market that's going to be tight, as it's probably going to be next year. Rates are coming down. There's going to be a lot of buyers. To the people who have customers who have more money and can potentially pay that commission fee may win out over ones that have less, unfortunately. Because a seller doesn't have to give the credit they don't want to give the credit.
Right.
And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Pablo, there's a couple of things, and I think, your point is excellent, Dan. But, there are some municipalities, even within states, where you found this participation rule. There were some states that would say, listen, we're not going to honor that. That's not enforceable. You had, even within states, areas that would say, we're not going to participate in that. And what you saw in a lot of those situations is really one of three things. Either one, and this is where I think it's a little misleading. I think everybody assumed that buyers don't have that money, that buyers don't have the money to pay the commissions. Personally, and again, this isn't talking to a lot of real estate professionals and a lot of realtors, when I would have conversations, a lot of folks would kind of set up the conversation to say, hey, you don't have to pay any money, or hey, my service is free as a buyer's agent. And I think that narrative has to shift, right? I think maybe the real estate associations, maybe they did a disservice kind of getting the clients accustomed to that. So that may have to just change, because I think a lot of folks you're going to find, and that's one of those areas that I was talking about, overwhelmingly, I think I saw a stat like 96% of the folks that were in those municipalities that didn't have that participation rule, they paid the buyer's commission on their own, and it wasn't an issue. But those that couldn't, then what we found is, to your point, we found programs, we found lenders in those specific areas where they expanded kind of the definition of what was allowed as a closing cost credit, maybe expand or increase the amount that was allowed, right? So that was another adjustment. And then the third point, the one that we saw too is, and this is where I think with the outcome, some of the folks are really jumping to conclusions. So this case is not saying, and the results of these cases are not saying, hey, you as a seller cannot pay the buyer's agent's commission if you want to, right? They're just saying you can't be forced into doing that, which this rule, essentially, the argument was it's forcing sellers to do. But if you as a seller decide, hey, I want to go ahead and get more activity if I pay that commission, let me talk to my listing agent, Pablo, we're not getting a lot of traction here. What if I pay their commission? Will that get more traction or something? If that help the situation, right? And then if the seller decides to do that, they can, right? But a lot of people are assuming that the sellers won't be able to. So that's what you found. You really found those three scenarios. You found people that could pay. You found lenders that expanded their programs, and then you found sellers that essentially they felt they weren't getting a lot of movement. They talked to the listing agent and say, hey, what if I offer to pay buyer's commission? Right. Will that make the situation better? And they did.
I know you and I had prior conversations since they started, right? I mean, I think it was November something when they came out. Right. Since then, we started looking deep. So what's going to change for us? I'm the one, and I think you've had an interesting saying there. It's like, I want to be in front of this thing. I don't want to be the one who jumps on the bus late, or by the time we get on it, everybody's already doing it. No, we want to know what we should be preparing for. And the first thing we did is not go after the sellers with this discounted prices. Let's go after our buyers and let's teach them what we could do for them. Let's educate them and say, this is our value ops. Right. This is my charge. Right. It could be 2.5. I don't know, whatever the case may be. So I charge 2.5 now. I'm going to go ahead and do whatever I can to get it from the seller. But in the case it doesn't happen, I will be straightforward with you. And guess what it's done? The last 3 calls we had, hey, we got the 2.5. Right. So we have a lot of discount brokerages that start to give out 2% or whatnot. Well, if you are able to sell your value ops to your buyer, and then the buyer understands what your value is, you shouldn't have a problem getting your 2.5.
That's exactly right.
I mean, now that we're preparing our buyers, the only regret we had, and I think my wife said, hey, I just regret we didn't do this in the beginning of the year. Yeah. Why did we wait so long? Right. Because I mean, I haven't had a buyer say, hey, Pablo, you're not worth the 0.5 or whatever the difference. I mean, we negotiate, we do a lot of work for them, we take them out, we spend time, we make sure we cater to every single thing they need in regards to the real estate transaction.
And Pablo, the thing to remember is, so right now there's going to be an appeal, right? So we don't know where this is all going to end up. Maybe it doesn't change. Maybe it stays exactly the same. But at least now what it's done is forced that narrative that I was talking about earlier to shift, right? Because I think a lot of agents, a lot of real estate professionals did themselves a disservice by saying, I'm free, you don't have to pay for me. Right? Because then that doesn't show much value.
It's not hard to sell free, right?
So listen, if you tell me I'm going to give you something you're going to give me something for free, I'm going to say, good, because I'm poor. Right? I can't afford it anyway. That's what I'm going to tell you, right? But the reality is, again, you're almost making yourself seem valueless, right? If you're saying, oh, you don't have to pay me, don't worry about paying me. Now you're shifting that narrative to the point that you said that you and your agents are doing is you're proving your worth. You're establishing the value that you bring. And I think most individuals, most homeowners or home buyers are going to say, yeah, I'll pay for that. That's worth it, right? Because I think the truism in everything is nothing is ever free. Nothing is ever free. Or if you get something for free, it's usually bad quality. But there's a reason for it, right?
Yeah, I want something back. Here it is. Right.
It was free and it broke down right away. Well, that's the reason I was free.
It's a great perspective, right?
I think Hector, a couple of my brother, he copied and pasted and something on Facebook about, hey, as agents, this is everything we do, and we might not get paid for it. And one of my buddies put on the web, that sounds like a horrible job.
Yeah.
Well, because at the end of the day, it's a good pay. And we do all this, and we do it right. It's a service that we're providing that we expect to get paid for.
Absolutely. You have to take into consideration that same on the lending side of things too. We do a lot of work with a lot of people, and some of them never make it to a closing table. Right. So there is a lot of time and money's invested,
effort,
to help. And I think the narrative is certainly going to be, we all have choices now. True. As a seller, you have a choice.
I'm glad you said that, because
you can do this or not.
That's a great point.
We were talking about lack of inventory. We're complaining there's no inventory. Well, what is this going to produce for the seller? Isn't this one of those, I guess, an incentive for them to want to get off that wall and list their property? It's going to change from a seller's market right to a buyer's when it goes into effect. Right? We still got a long way before we get there. Right. But once we start telling sellers, hey, I'll list it, so they haven't let the buyer go chase it. Well, I mean, if I was waiting to get on the market because I wasn't sure I was going to collect enough, hey, if I'm saving $8,000, yeah, it might just change the things. Sure. But now, if it doesn't work for that seller, I'm going to say the agents, I can't show it. Okay, then the seller has a choice. Hey, listen, now go ahead and offer commission. Right. Now you got him off the fence. Now it's in the middle. You think he's going to say, no, you know what, just take me off. We'll wait again until something else happens. I don't think that would be the case.
Yeah. Right.
I think it's going to change a lot in today's market. I think there's a lot of factors that are going to go in. But this reminds me of, I've been almost 20 years in January, right? Mm-hmm. So remember when the fax machine came out? Sure. And everybody, oh my God, we had to present the office to the seller.
Revolutionize it.
You're a lazy ass agent if you're not presenting. If you're faxing that offer,
you're not driving
that's what you're doing. Yes. And we saw what happened there, right? Yes. And then it went to emails. And then another one, Zillow came out. Everybody, do not dust the enemy. If you're going with them, you're helping the enemy. And you know what? I was ahead of that. And we did well. We were paying $400 a month, and we got 14 closings. Now it's $4,000. You get 2 closings. Yes. All right. So we had that, and then Redfin. So every time there's a major change, people just scared to change. The dinosaurs don't want to move forward. They just want to stay where they're at, their comfort zone. I could sell free all day. So you ask, hey, well, how much is that free? Oh, of course I'm going to go with it, right? But you start telling someone, hey, listen, I'm going to charge you 2.5%. Well, what? Wait, how much is that? It could be a couple thousand, but here's what I'm going to do for you. Yeah. And I'm going to lay it out. And here's my presentation. If you actually organize it, you put it right, you should have no problem collecting what your service is worth. Now, if you're a part-time agent and you give shitty service, well, then you should get shitty pay.
Yeah, that's the reality of life, right?
Yeah. The guy that says, look, bro, I'm going to help you out because of it. Give me a 1%. I don't care. I'll put it together for them. But that's it.
That's the kind of service you're going to get.
Yeah. You get what you pay for. I think at the end of the day, I think this people look at this as a half empty glass. I look at this half full. I think this is going to get better. I think it's going to really weed out the agents just don't know how to lead the business.
You're right, Pablo, because it's human nature, right? People fear change. But in every moment of change, there's always opportunity. It just depends on who wants to capitalize on that opportunity.
Right.
So right now, some people are saying, hey, there's already brokerages that are starting to change exactly, we've talked about it, but there are brokerages that have already started changing sort of their listing, their buyers presentations. They're changing the way they do business in anticipation of what this could be. And they don't know, but some of them have said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and I think this is where it's going to go. And even if it doesn't go that way, I think there's a good opportunity. So I'm going to change my business structure and I'm going to do that.
And I'm one of them. Like I said earlier, we started focusing on getting that buyer agency agreement signed in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Not at the end when it's all, okay, we're ready to close it. No, you're sitting in the front.
Right off the bat.
You're straight off the forward. Here's what it's going to be. Here's what I'm going to do for you.
Right. It's something you never had to really do before.
Right.
There was no, here's what I am going to do for you.
Yeah.
You just started, you represented them, and so I'm going to set you up on this. Now you're spelling it all out. Here's what
and
you're
you know
getting.
what pisses me off, and I think Manny was right. Like, why didn't do this right when we just started the conversation? I wasn't, it has been a rule for a long time. It's been, you got to get your buyer's agreement. They wouldn't even close the file without it.
Right.
So how many of us were saying in the end, like, oh yeah, just like this, I need to close it. No, man, do it in the beginning. Get it in, get it done.
Very true.
If I would have done this earlier, oh, geez, it would have been a whole different. So I would never have to. I don't care what the seller's offering. I'm going to get the 2. I'm going to get the 2.5. I'm going to try it.
Joe does that, right? I'm going to represent you. Here's exactly what we're going to do, and here's what our fee is.
That's exactly
to
right.
represent you.
Excellent
But title
point.
companies, attorneys, to agents, and the only thing that I see that I guess we're going to have to get better at is when you do that, is getting it to you guys. And you guys getting it.
You have to do that early on.
Because if you wait to the end and now you can't change it, I mean that's one of these. It's a learning curve.
Right. And it's going to be an education process for the borrower to understand that this is how it could work, right? So, you may find the perfect listing that you love, and the seller's paying that fee, right? You may not, and we need to make sure you're financially prepared for your down payment, your costs, and making sure that if we need to do any negotiating, we do it the right way.
Now I know you mentioned that a VA won't allow those type of fees.
VA they have a very specific rule that the veteran cannot pay the real estate agent commission. It's specifically stated that way. They can get a credit.
Question for you on that one, before I forget, is if they won't allow that as a commission fee, can it be a service fee? Separate transaction, like the buyer's agreement.
It's going to be interesting to see if that adjustment is allowed. My personal belief is, again, depending on how these verdicts come down and the appeals come down, I wouldn't be surprised then if we see like VA actually just tweaking their rules. Right. They're going to have to to adjust.
Well, because what's going to happen is the veteran's going to in some ways be discriminated against in negotiating the best deal.
Right. So they're going to have to tweak those things, right? So right now, I am sure that the VA is having those conversations right now as we speak, right? Just considering like, hey, if this rule changes, how do we adjust to it? Because you're right, you can't have that happening to veterans. That's
correct. It's a disparate impact, right?
Yeah,
it's it's something that is a result of
And we know the changes already here. I mean, the MLS just allowed agents. I know that earlier. I'll put in 0%. What does that tell you?
Right.
I mean, what's going to happen? It's only a matter of time when it's just going to be that domino effect. Hey, you guys are seeing 0% out there. We already saw one. 0%. Buyer gets buyer has to pay the buyer agency fee. Okay, you know what? It's here, and it's just only a matter of months when they did this. It's only by 2024 you're gonna see a lot more of it. So I guess I'm preparing. Whatever happens, it doesn't matter. I think we're doing the right move now, getting better at the buyer presentations, working with legal, working with the lending department. Say, hey, what else can we do to make this a lot easier? How can we
facilitate? The borrower sees everything that's out there. We may set them up on a search, right? And you're showing. They have access to everything. So, if you say, hey, I want to see this property, you as a realtor, how are you going to explain, well, I really can't see that one there. They're not paying a commission to me, right?
Right.
Yeah. Who's going to do that, right? I mean, that would really damage your career.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? We're always scared. Again, we're scared of change, right? Like, I don't know about charging. Like, I'm not into charging upfront fees, and that's just not my thing. I mean, I thought about, can I do it? Sure, and I'll probably get it, but I'm not there yet. I don't think I want it. I'm okay with 2.5%.
Sure,
that's my value.
Yes.
Give me that, I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Now you start nickel and diming, everybody start adding 395, 795. I mean, okay, that's fine. If you might get it, that's great. That's your market. That's not our market. Chicagoland is not there. You see how many, there's more discount brokers than anything else. Our competition is fierce. Right? So I know that, I guess that change, I'm going to talk about the argument I'm getting from the pushbacks, right?
Yeah, what's the pushback?
I went to a summit, the Coaching Plus Summit, and I talked to this guy's a coach, he's a big guy. So I'd say, what do you think? I mean, you stick with what you know. You get your 5% or your 6%. No matter, you're the best, you sell it. And so I can feel that, no, stay where we're at. We stay together, we hold the front. We hold the front. And man, I've been here before. I've been here before.
No, and you're right, because honestly, and again, we don't know what the results of the appeals are going to be. Personally, my personal belief is I really think that there's just such a public outcry, and I think there's some merit to the plaintiffs. I mean, I'm not going to agree with either side. I can understand some of these things because, there are the instances. It's, I think folks ignore some of the realities of what happens in the business, right? So if you're not showing a commission it's not supposed to happen, but we all know and we hear the situations of agents that are not showing the property, right? If you're not showing a commission, if you're not giving out a commission to the buyer's agent,
Right.
we see it. It's the reality of the world. I would hear from clients that would say, I didn't pay this commission and then nobody's showing my houses. Whether we like it or not, that's what happens.
Right.
So
right.
somehow it has to be addressed. It has to be addressed.
And I think the abuse of some agents, we see agents charging 6%, and that's great, fine, but they give out 2%.
Right.
But on their listing agreement, it's 3 and 3, but they keep 4, they give out 2. I think that's where people are like, they want to cut down. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you go to closing, you get the HUD, like, what? You walked away with 10 and gave me 4?
Yeah.
And you know what? That's when you start seeing a problem, and that's
and maybe to your point right now, Pablo, maybe that really will have a sort of a finer tooth and comb to look at how people approach that, right? Because there are abuses. I mean, if we don't admit that there are abuses, we're lying to ourselves, right? So maybe this will now at least somewhat clean up the system, if you will, right? Where people are going to have to say, listen, play closer by the rules or play by the rules, or otherwise, you're going to be left out.
It's only a matter of time when people get caught.
Yeah.
I mean, karma's a bitch. We pick up, and these agents think they're getting away with it. No, the worst. What the hell? I mean, we're not stupid. We can see it in writing when it goes.
Sure.
And I think that's another rule to change. We want to see some listing agreements. Let me see what you got. Because how do you do that? It just doesn't make sense. What seller would agree to, I'll give you the 4 and you give out 2. That's fine. No, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And because of those kind of things, that's why a lot of problems are not only from the consumer, but your colleagues. Like, hey, what are you doing? That's not play nice. Play
by the rules.
And because you're not playing by the rules, then all these new rules begin to come out.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm kind of glad to see that, right? But it shouldn't get to that point. I mean, we should all know better, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But I expect some great changes. I think you and I will be working closely, and then of course with Dan as well.
Sure.
Let's get the HUD over. Let's get the buyer agency agreement, the buyer agency agreement, the commission letter. Here's on the buy side. Let's see what you can do. Now, of course, VA will figure that out. But these are great things that are happening. I think in the long run, the ones that are meant to stay are the ones that are meant to be will be here, right?
Hey, the fax machine stayed, right?
Yeah. And then the emails come out. God forbid you said something in an email.
Then you got DocuSign and everything. So there's always evolution.
Yes. And everybody's always pushing you back on those things, but eventually it's going to happen. And I think this is something that's going to happen. We're going to see a lot more of it.
You have to address it.
Just got to get ready for it.
That's right.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Salute for being out here. It's a great conversation.
Cheers.
Let's enjoy the weekend, and we'll be back with another episode of Bar Talk soon.
All right, good.
All right.